our systems are overloaded. And so why is kombucha popular now? Because we need it. Because now we need it the most.
Welcome to the Wise Traditions Podcast, sponsored by the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
I'm your host, Hilda Labrada Gore. Our guest today is Hannah Crum, a bright, creative, free spirit known as the Kombucha Mamma. Kombucha is a fermented drink that is growing in popularity for all of the right reasons. In today's episode, Hannah tells us all about the drink, how she got into making it, why she is so passionate about its benefits, and how you can learn to brew it too. First, we want to thank our sponsors, the Nutritional Therapy Association, Foundational Holistic Nutrition Education, real education for people who believe in real food. Go to nutritionaltherapy.com. And Magnetico Sleep Pads. Recharge and repair your body while you sleep. MagneticoSleep.com. And now, on to the interview recorded at the Wise Traditions Conference in Anaheim last fall. Welcome to the podcast, Hannah.
Thanks, Hilda. Great to be here.
How did you get into this field of wellness and nutrition and stuff?
You know, it was really through kombucha that I discovered the Weston A. Price Foundation. It's kind of an interesting story in that I had discovered kombucha back in 2003 and was making it and brewing it. And then in 2010, there was, jump forward 7 years, there was a withdrawal where Whole Foods voluntarily took kombucha off the shelves because they were concerned about reports that there may be more than the legal amount of alcohol present in it. And so working on the information they had at that time, even though there wasn't a public health safety concern or anything like that, they decided to ask people to relabel their product, make sure that it was within compliance standards. And so all the kombucha kind of left Whole Foods at that time. Well, one of the brands that had been sold in California was Living Tea, made by Organic Pastures, which is a raw milk dairy. Ah. So they had been making kombucha as kind of just an offshoot product, another fermented thing that they were adding to their repertoire. And at the time, I had my blog and happened to be in Fresno, and I wanted to reach out and interview them about what was going on. And so I reached out to Mark, and we ended up meeting. And, you know, of course, not only did we talk about kombucha, but I learned all about raw milk, which I had no clue about. Wasn't even on my radar. I'd stopped drinking milk years ago because it didn't make me feel good. And it was Mark who really introduced me to the Weston A. Price Foundation. So it was through kind of a funny doorway that I learned about it. A lot of people learn about kombucha from Nourishing Traditions, and I learned about kombucha, and then I found Weston A. Price Foundation.
So kombucha is such a weird product. I don't even know if everyone knows what it is. Why don't you take it from the top? What is kombucha, and then how did you get into that?
Great question. Kombucha is very basically fermented tea. Another way to think about it is it's tea vinegar, because it's an acetic acid ferment like a vinegar ferment. But where most vinegars are diluted to a 4 to 8% acetic solution that's still very sour, kombucha is only around 1%. So we think of it as a nice, light, easy drinking vinegar. And then I started making kombucha. A friend from college had it at his place in San Francisco. I'd never heard of it. I got introduced to it and came back to LA, grabbed a bottle off the shelf, and just loved it at first sip. For me, a lot of people when they first try kombucha, they get kombucha face, which is like, they get all sour face because our food supply is so over sugarified. For me, I was naturally a pickle lover, and so that tangy flavor just really resonated, and I can feel like every nerve ending opening up when I first tried it, and so it was instantly something I wanted to buy all the time.
Now, is it true that kombucha was originally a Chinese fermented tea? Where did it come from?
The origins are still pretty mysterious. We've got a lot of mythology around kombucha and where it may have came from. Being a tea ferment, of course, tea originated in China. The Chinese have been fermenting for millennia, so it's a very logical supposition that it may have originated in China. From there, it traversed through the different trade routes and ended up in Russia, where it became incredibly popular, and then spread through Europe and to the United States from there.
Okay, so you like the taste of it, and how did you get from that to starting to make it?
Well, so my thirst outgrew my budget. Basically, I was spending so much money on kombucha at Whole Foods, and because I had seen my friends' mysterious jars, I said, you know what, I'm going to just try and do this myself. How hard could it be? So I went to the library, I checked out whatever books I could find on it, looked at stuff online, found a culture locally in LA, and just started making it myself.
Oh, I really want to hear more because our thirst has outgrown our budget too. We have fallen in love with the drink. And honestly, though, I want to go back to this alcohol content you were talking about at first, because I wonder if we like it so much because it's got a little alcohol in it. Tell us, what's the story with that?
Sure. Well, all fermented beverages and foods, everything's going to have, all of those will have trace amounts of ethanol. More often than not, especially if it's not a beer or wine or spirit where it's intending to have a large amount of alcohol, that trace amount is in fact a nutrient. And what it does is it preserves the culture and prevents harmful microorganisms from colonizing it. And then also it helps to allow the body to absorb the nutrition more easily. You know, alcohol was our original medicine. We would put herbs and infuse things into it, and that was what we used. You know, think about cough syrups and tinctures. That's what those are. So the very trace amounts present in our fermented drinks is something similar to, you know, what you'd find in fruit juice or an overripe banana. Something like that is the amounts you'll find present. So
why did Whole Foods do that recall so many years ago?
Well, unfortunately, the testing protocols that we have for measuring alcohol in fermented drinks are very closely associated with the beer and wine industry. They've been studying their products for hundreds and hundreds of years and have, you know, developed many techniques for sussing out ethanol in their products, and they're at a higher percentage. Well, when we're talking about very trace amounts that are 0.5% and lower, those same techniques will often have false positives because they don't take into account the healthy organic acids, which have a similar profile to the ethanol, or the sediment that's present in the drink from the naturally living yeast and bacteria strands. So there's several confounding factors when we get to that level. So through Kombucha Brewers International, which is the trade association we founded in partnership with kombucha brewers here and around the world, we are establishing with the AOAC, which is a nonprofit association of analytical chemists. They're the ones who kind of set standards that governments around the world then utilize. We're working with them to establish a new testing protocol for ethanol in kombucha. And we think this is also going to help the other low alcohol fermented drinks because these techniques will likely be applicable to things like water, kefir, and kvass. Because we know kombucha is just the first of these drinks that's gaining in popularity. We think that, you know, root beer and ginger ale and all these kind of original fermented drinks are going to come back strong once they see that there's a stable marketplace based on the work that we're doing.
So you started Kombucha Brewers International to kind of standardize the product.
Exactly right. As a result of what happened in 2010, you know, part of why Whole Foods made the choice they did is they didn't have anyone to talk to about industry issues. And so, you know, the industry is only about 20 years old, which is fairly young, but because it's becoming so popular and so many people are finding out about it, we really need a way to help educate brewers so that they're making compliant products, they're following good business practices, making sure everything's clean and safe. And that's what our organization does, is we've established best practices, and we're also developing a KBI verification program. So the purpose of this program is to give the education to the brewers, help them with HACCP plan training, so that's hazardous and critical control points. Because regulators don't understand our product, even though we're not required to have a HACCP, we found that when we have one of those in place, what we're saying to the regulators is we understand our process. We know where things could go wrong, and we've already considered the controls we need in place to deal with those issues should they arise. And the truth is, these products are incredibly safe to make. I mean, think about it. If humans have been passing around scobies and you know, other cultures for hundreds, maybe thousands of years, the only reason they're still here today is because they're easy and they're safe.
I liken it to friendship bread. I remember getting bags of little starter friendship bread saying, hey, make this, and then it would sit on my counter and I would never get around to it, but that's another story. So it's like that, right? There's something that starts the fermentation process, and you need that to begin. It's called the mother or SCOBY, is that right?
Exactly right, and that's true of all ferments, even yogurt. You're taking some culture from the prior batch to inoculate the future batch. Yogurt, kefir, sourdough bread, kombucha, all of these fermentation cultures are passed on, and it's because they're housing that unique diverse colony culture of bacteria and yeast together that when you put it into the new substrate, in the case of kombucha, that's sweet tea, in case of yogurt, that'd be milk. Whenever we put that in there, it now then spreads that culture through the rest of the substrate. All that nutrition then is what creates your fermented food or beverage.
So why are we so scared of it? I have to admit, we have a SCOBY or a mother in a little jar on our counter, and we haven't yet taken the plunge. What is holding us back? What is holding a lot of people back?
We live in an anomaly in time. All throughout human history, we evolved with bacteria and yeast. We evolved with fermentation. Refrigerators are only about 200 years old. So how the heck did we have food for the winter if we didn't have refrigeration? Well, we had preservation through fermentation. And so what happened, though, is with the processed foods revolution after the World War II and things like that, we became disconnected from these ancient practices. And so our fear really comes from a lack of knowledge and understanding. Our grandmothers, our mothers did not teach us these practices. And so we feel afraid as a result of that. So what we're doing is giving the information and the knowledge to empower people to feel confident working with this again because it's outside of their normal experience.
Right. So we might just be intimidated because we haven't tried it before. No one's handed down the information. But I've also heard that if you do it wrong, it can kill you.
Well, this is the fear that they try to inject into all kinds of things to prevent you from consuming really healthy things that are inexpensive to make at home. Kombucha is very low pH, and its healthy organic acid profile through numerous studies has been shown to kill pathogenic organisms on contact, kill things like E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, Streptococcus. Some studies have shown that it's comparable to other antibiotics to combat MRSA and these other types of very aggressive pathogenic organisms.
Oh, so it'll kill the bad guys, but not us?
So think about it like this, right? If pathogens were so powerful, we'd all be dead already. So what that means is that there's a heck of a lot more good guys out there than quote-unquote bad guys. And so by consuming the good guys, we hold those bad guys in check.
That leads me to the next question I wanted to ask you. Why is kombucha all the rage? What are the health benefits of this fermented drink?
Great question. The first thing is digestion. Our gut is really our first brain. I know people say it's the second, but I personally believe that if your gut is out of order, oftentimes you have brain fog and you can't think clearly. Moreover, your enteric system has more neurotransmitters and nerve endings than your brain does. And so it's sending signals back and forth through the vagus nerve. It's perceiving things that your brain isn't even able to comprehend. And so digestion is one of the things that we see it really helps with. Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the gut. So when we start to bring our gut back into alignment, that heals a lot of these autoimmune diseases, which are really symptoms of the same root cause. Now, other things it's really great for is it creates these healthy detoxifying acids. And to answer your question about why is it popular now, I think this really hits the nail on the head. So kombucha creates gluconic and glucuronic acid. Our bodies also make these acids, but not in enough quantity. So glucuronic acid is really special because when it bonds to toxic molecules, and once that bond is created, it can't be broken. And so when we drink water after our kombucha, we're able to, through hydrolysis, release these toxins from our body. We're essentially cleaning our filter, our liver. We're cleaning the filter so that all that gunk goes away. Well, right now we live in a time where the air is polluted, the water's polluted, the food's polluted, the beauty products are toxic. Our bodies they're literally freaking out. This is why we're seeing such a huge rise in all of these diseases, is because our systems are overloaded. And so why is kombucha popular now? Because we need it. Because now we need it the most. The thing that people say more than anything else is, it makes me feel good.
I wanted to ask you if you had any stories of people who have seen some health benefits. I know this will be anecdotal, but tell me in your experience who you've talked to that is like, yeah, this makes me feel good, but it also did this for me.
We hear this all the time from our customers, people writing in, talking about, things that if the FDA heard they would be like, you can't say that. Even GT's kombucha, on the back of his bottle, he's the guy who kind of started the whole industry. His mother was dealing with cancer, and in fact, she didn't even know she had cancer because it hadn't metastasized, and it was because she was drinking kombucha. And one of the research studies we talked about demonstrated that it helps to prevent cancer from metastasizing. But because it was an aggressive form, she went ahead with the chemotherapy. She drank kombucha throughout that process, and it supported her. She had less nausea. She was able to recover more quickly, and she's been cancer-free for 20 years now. And it was witnessing her struggle with this and how the kombucha supported her through this that inspired him to put it in a bottle and put it on the shelf and get it into people's bodies.
And now it's in supermarkets all over the place, even regular stores, not just the health food stores, right?
Absolutely. And, one of the knocks on kombucha is that there's no research on it, and that's simply false. There have been so much research conducted on it in the last 150 years. The thing is, a lot of it's not in English because it's not necessarily happening here in the United States. Of course, we anticipate that shifting as more colleges are now starting to offer fermentation programs, as we're getting really into this human microbiome research and understanding the crucial role that bacteria play in our health. I think we're going to see more and more studies coming through demonstrating its efficacy. But even in terms of cancer, some of the studies they've done in vivo in cells or in rats and things like that, where they'll put kombucha to prostate cancer cells, we see far less chromosomal aberrations when exposed to radiation. We see less toxicity absorbed in the first place. It acts as a preventative. So our philosophy is drink kombucha and keep calm.
I love it. So tell me something. You are known as the Kombucha Mamma. Is it because you know all these things or because you've been at it so long? Tell me how that little nickname came about.
I'm the mother to millions of bacteria all over the world. So we've been educating people. I started Kombucha Camp as a class in my home to teach people how to make this delicious beverage at home here in LA, of course. Where else could I have done this class? And that was back in 2004. I started blogging about kombucha in 2007 just because I was frustrated by the lack of quality information. I mean, you've got the Mayo Clinic saying, don't make this stuff at home, and other people touting, it could do this, it could do that. When in fact we've never seen any deaths from kombucha or anything like that. So I started blogging about it, and then people would ask for cultures here and there. Well, that of course evolved into not only quality information, but then quality supplies, and we back that up with quality support because we know that, like you, there's trepidation. And so we want to make sure people feel confident and empowered with this process and that they can do it themselves. But very much like the craft beer industry, we see that there's a mutual benefit. I enjoy purchasing kombucha at the store and trying local brands. And what's really amazing is while we founded our Kombucha Brewers International in 2014 with 40 brewers, we're about to start our third year and we're almost over 100 brewers worldwide. Just to speak to how quickly and how much this has grown. And, we don't see ourselves as being in competition with each other. I mean, look, you go into a grocery store, how many types of IPA are on the shelf? How many types of Merlot are there? And they're all next to each other. And that's what we see our product is. It's a craft product. Each one tastes different. And it's great to try the local brands, make yours at home. The same is true in beer and wine. People will make it at home, but then they're also buying the commercial stuff. And, we really see that symbiosis in this world as part of what's propelling it forward so quickly.
So how long have you been at it?
Over 10 years.
And so you are the mother of bacteria all over the world. I love that. We want to take a moment now to thank our sponsors. The Nutritional Therapy Association, Foundational Holistic Nutrition Education. The Nutritional Therapy Association was founded on the teachings of Weston A. Price and the science of Dr. Francis M. Pottinger. Students in our seminars learn to correct nutritional imbalances from a holistic perspective, emphasizing the importance of properly prepared, nutrient-dense whole foods. Real education for people who believe in real food. Visit nutritionaltherapy.com. And did you know that you are dependent on the Earth's magnetic field for life? Did you know the Earth's magnetic field has declined drastically? Magnetico sleep pads are essential to correct that deficiency. Recharge and repair your body while you sleep. Visit magneticosleep.com. Again, that's magneticosleep.com. And now back to our program. Okay, so a minute ago you enumerated a few of the, anecdotal stories, well, GT's mom, and then people just generally feeling better. Can you tell us more about the health benefits of kombucha? Just break it down for us.
Sure. Well, as we mentioned earlier, kombucha is fermented tea. So let's talk about tea. Tea is the most popular beverage in the world outside of water. In fact, wars have been fought over tea, as we know historically. So this plant is incredibly healthy. It's very well studied. It too has anti-cancer properties, antioxidants, polyphenols, catechins, all these great healthy elements to it. And being an acetic acid ferment like vinegar, we also know all about the health benefits of vinegar, right? Vinegar has been taken traditionally to help with things like diabetes and other ailments in the body. It's, again, one of our original medicines. So now we take this amazingly healthy plant with this great healthy bacteria that creates the vinegar. We have tea vinegar. We add the living yeast, which have all of the B vitamins in a living form, as well as the probiotic bacteria, the bacteria that benefit the body. It makes sense why kombucha is such a powerhouse of all of these great things.
But it's not like a panacea. It doesn't heal everything.
It's the fallacy of our culture in that we're always looking for the one thing or the one magic bullet. And the truth is, we are diverse organisms. We ourselves are scobies. We're a collection of bacteria and other organisms. And in fact, if we look at our human cells and compared to that, we're really only 1/10 human in terms of number of cells. So once you start realizing that everything in the world is bacteria powered, it makes a lot of sense why consuming bacteria rich foods has such a beneficial effect on our bodies.
Some people, when they look at the label of kombucha, see that it has a lot of sugar and they get worried. Is that bad for us? Isn't sugar bad for us? Everyone's saying it is.
Well, and this is again this oversimplification. One of our phrases is consider the source. Where is that sugar coming from? In what form? Is it a high fructose corn syrup that's in your processed food product that is not providing any nutrition? Sugar is a nutrient. It's a vital nutrient for everything. In fact, our DNA is made up of a sugar phosphate backbone. Now, of course, that's not the same as table sugar, but the point is that sugar is incredibly vital and nutritious, but how we consume it and in what source is what makes the difference. So with kombucha, the sugar's being fermented. So if you were to taste that sweet tea before adding any culture or starter liquid, I guarantee you'd be like, oh my gosh, it's so sweet. Like you wouldn't want to drink that. And yet when you come to the end of that 7 or 14 days, depending on how long you're fermenting it and how warm or cool your conditions are, it gets more and more sour over time. So clearly the sugar is utilized in the process. What happens is the yeast breaks the sugar, which is sucrose, into its two component molecules, fructose and glucose. The yeast really work with the fructose and that becomes a nutrition source for them, whereas the bacteria work with the glucose and that's where those G acids come from, the gluconic and glucuronic acid. So both parts of the sugar are really important, and that's why sugar is important as the sugar source. A lot of people want to be like, can I make it with stevia or this or that? First of all, stevia is not fermentable, so we would not recommend that for primary fermentation, though you certainly could add it to the kombucha after the fact if you wanted to sweeten it like you would sweeten a cup of tea. You can use other sugars to ferment with kombucha, but they'll often create different types of flavors or different fermentation times. So if you're a home brewer and want to experiment, use one of your extra cultures from your SCOBY hotel. But in terms of looking at it on the bottle at the grocery store, sometimes it can be confusing. You have to use sugar to make kombucha. So if sugar's not on the label, then they're leaving it out. Now, it's not to say that means it's sweetened after the fact. Each brand is going to have their own flavoring process. And in fact, most of them, even if they do a secondary fermentation, they're adding a juice or a spice or something like that as opposed to actual sugar to make it sweet. So looking at the sugar grams on a bottle of kombucha, I feel like, again, we're focusing on the wrong thing, like worrying about how much sugar's in the kombucha. Let your tongue tell you how much sugar's in the kombucha. If the kombucha you're drinking is very sweet, well, then you might want to switch to a brand that's got a little more tangy flavor because that's going to have less sugar in it.
And you can even make it, okay, let's say if you want to make it for yourself, if you're like, okay, I'm ready to take the plunge, where do you get a SCOBY?
Well, being the mother of all bacteria or all kombucha cultures, you certainly can come to Kombucha Camp. We've got great cultures that will, here's the great thing about a culture. It's only $25 and you will get a lifetime supply. Because the culture reproduces, because with every batch you have a new layer of bacterial cellulose, a new SCOBY, this is like watching abundance in action. This is like infinite. All you have to do is feed it and care for it, and it's going to keep showing up for you.
It's like the gift that keeps giving.
Exactly right. And all we have to do is nurture it a little, give it the right conditions that it prefers, and it will give back to you as well.
And you were talking about flavorings a minute ago. If you are making it yourself, you can add different things to get a flavor that you want, right?
Exactly right. And so, and a little bit goes a long way. So, for instance, if you're using juice, usually no more than 5 or 10% of the entire bottle will be juice. So, even if we're adding a little bit of, sugar after the fact, it's a very small amount, and it's just to create that yummy other flavor. The other thing is, again, having those trace amounts of ethanol and being a vinegar, it pulls the nutrition from whatever you're putting into it. So if you're putting certain types of herbs that have particular benefits, that will be passed on to you in your brew.
So obviously you're really big on this. Kombucha Mamma, I love it. How much do you drink? Should people drink like a whole, 16 ounces every day or 8 ounces? Do you have a recommendation along those lines? How much is too much?
Great question. And our philosophy is trust your gut, because your gut, Hilda, is different from mine. Mm-hmm. And the nutritional inputs that you require are different from mine, because your microbiome, your bacteria need different things and work with it differently. So for people who are just starting out, who are totally new to fermented foods, of course, if you start consuming them too quickly, you can have a detox reaction. And usually that manifests either in having to go to the restroom or, evacuating, or it could be like a light rash or a light headache, something like that. If you notice those types of symptoms, that's a sign to take it easy, drink more water, allow your body to adjust more gradually. For folks who drink it and feel, oh my gosh, I love this and I'm really craving it, trust your gut. If you feel like that's coming from a place of your body needs that nutrition, then go ahead and drink it. What I like to ask people is, well, how much broccoli should you eat? Right? At a certain point, your body says, okay, I've had enough of the nutrition coming from that source.
Yes.
And the same is true of kombucha. What happens, though, is oftentimes early on, because their bodies are out of balance, they crave a whole bunch of kombucha, and then they're worried, oh, no, I'm addicted to it, when really your body's just rebalancing. And so once it's gone through that rebalancing, many people find then their cravings will taper off. And so I personally don't even necessarily drink kombucha every day. Mm-hmm. I have other beverages that I like to incorporate as well. But I do notice if I haven't had it for a few days. And then there's days where I'm having 16 or 32 ounces of it at a time.
62 would be a lot.
That'd be a lot. I haven't quite gotten up to half a gallon, I don't think. But, because I make it myself, I have as much as I desire. And
that's great. Your body will tell you.
Exactly right.
So I heard you mention a moment ago something about drinking water after you drink kombucha. I've never heard that before. Can you tell me more about that?
Absolutely. So again, when we think about that detoxification process, as those molecules are exchanging in the liver and grabbing those toxins, they're just released back into the bloodstream. So if we want them to leave our bodies, then we need to encourage urination or some type of elimination process. And so drinking a little extra water will also help to allow those substances to leave your body more quickly.
Do you drink the same amount as equal to the kombucha you just drank?
It's really up to you. To be truthful, I'm not a big fan of water. When you look back in time, humans didn't really drink water. We drank fermented drinks. The water wasn't potable because it had other bacteria that give you dysentery or something like that. So water wasn't really what we drank. We drank a fermented form of water, or we put vinegar in the water to sterilize it. So even putting a little bit of kombucha in your water can be a great way to get that in there. So I like kombucha water, where, especially if it's a little on the tangier side, maybe it's tangier than I really want in that moment, pouring a little bit of water, putting it over ice, all of that's going to shift the pH. It'll open up the flavor a little bit, make it easier to drink, and then of course that water will assist with the detox process.
Did you answer the question about the amounts?
The amounts, so it's up to you, right?
Okay.
It doesn't have, and this is the whole thing, right? This is listening to your body. We don't necessarily have a set way we have to do everything. It's more finding what works for you.
I love it. So tell me, are your friends and family tired of hearing you talk about kombucha?
Maybe they might be at this point, but we're really excited because our book is coming out, the Big Book of Kombucha. We've been working on this for the last few years, 400 pages all about the subject. So this is not only how-to and instructions, but it's also things we've learned in our 10 plus years of brewing kombucha. It also has a very robust research section and symptom-specific section because, again, we really want people to understand that this is a well-researched product. And then there's a ton of recipes. So have you ever eaten the SCOBY?
No.
Well, so when I say eat your mother, basically what I mean by that is the culture, the bacterial cellulose is edible. It's what we call kind of a closed loop product in that every aspect of it can be consumed or utilized for another purpose. So for instance, the culture can not only be consumed, it can also be used as a living bandage. It's also used sometimes as a beauty product. In Japan, they sell bacterial cellulose facials that you just lay a piece of that on your face. Well, if you're making kombucha at home, you just grab a SCOBY out of your jar. Now, don't go brewing with that one again, but you can grab a SCOBY and you can do all kinds of things with it. But bacterial cellulose, the benefit to consuming it is first of all, it's insoluble fiber, which means we can't digest it. So what it does is it acts like a broom, and it will pull excess sugar, excess cholesterol, excess hormones from our body on its way out as it just kind of sweeps through the system.
Oh my gosh, this is fascinating. Well, thank you so much for coming out today. I hope we can have another conversation about kombucha, and I would love to come try some of your products sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Hilda. Great to be here.
Thanks for listening today. If you like what you heard, please review this podcast on iTunes and let the world know. Also, you can find out more about our guests and today's topic by going to our website, westinaprice.org. Click on the word podcast to find more information and pertinent links. If you're interested in finding out more about healthy living in general, look for a Weston A. Price chapter near you. Again, go to our website, westinaprice.org, and click on the sidebar to find a local chapter. You'll find a group of like-minded people in your area that can help you on your journey to optimal health. Again, thanks for listening. Wise Traditions is brought to you by the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts.